Welcome back. This is group session 2, and we're looking at reducing burnout and rebuilding empathy. Again, as we note that if you're really struggling hard right now, Tracy Logan is a registered psychotherapist that has been assigned with some of the emergency funds that came into the community to help those specifically impacted by some of the frontline work being done and some of the trauma that comes into providing it. And when we talk about frontline, I'm going to say again, that is a very inclusive term, and it means, of course, police, fire, EMS, and any community frontline service worker that's directly involved with the care of some of our most vulnerable in terms of homelessness and addictions and mental health folks. So this session is going to deal with the stages of burnout. And that is all that's going to be talked about today, because it's really important to remember at least some sort of framework for you to kind of base where you might be in terms of burnout or compassion fatigue. For our point of view on these group sessions, we're looking at burnout specifically. The next series that we'll be doing will be looking more at the compassion fatigue and that impact in terms of vicarious trauma and secondary trauma stages. So for our purposes here, it's burnout. And for our work and these series of group pieces, we'll be looking specifically at burnout. So stages of burnout. It develops over time. You heard that in the first session. And it's really hard to pinpoint it. However, two psychologists, Gail North and Hubert Freudenberger, came up with the 12 stages of burnout. And you can find their work all over. And if you are interested in seeing more or exploring in depth, we'll also be providing links as we move along with some of the research papers and some of the pieces that you'll see where we're pulling some of our information from. So they identified 12 stages, and I think they're good stages. I think they're a good benchmark for people to use because they're really clear. I want to tell you there are other scales and there are other measurements, but we're going to use something that seems pretty concise and clear. We have neighbors next door. You may hear we share a space with co-ed, and their activity room is right beside us. So hopefully it's not too loud, but they're pretty amazing neighbors. You might hear the odd thump or two as a basketball hits the wall. First stage that we talk about is an urgent need to prove yourself. In this earliest part of burnout, you're trying to show that you can do more, that you are great at your job, that you'll take on more, and that you are a perfectionist, and that you're not afraid of doing demanding work, that you wear a cape, essentially. And I think that comes from a fear. You start to sit and you think that maybe you're not good enough, so you overcompensate. So when you have the superhero syndrome, it's time to check yourself and see where this is coming from. The other things you start to do is that you start to work harder. You forget to ask for your help from your team, and you try to do it all. And you rush to complete tasks as soon as possible so you can take on other tasks. And you just continue layering, working harder at doing this, along with the urgent need to demonstrate that you're really good at your job. And because of 1 and 2, the third phase of burnout is you start to neglect your own needs. And I mean, that only stands to reason, because if you're trying to save the world and work harder, something's got to give. And so that's usually the self-care around yourself. You stop going out, you stop hanging out with your family. You find you're probably behind your computer more, or working on your phone, and you can be present in a room but not really there because of this taking you away, because the job demands encroach into your family life. But this is also the stage you start to make small mistakes. And then conversely, because you're working so hard and you're trying to do it all, you start to have more interpersonal conflicts. And that's not only at home, but it's also on the job. You just don't sleep well, like I say for many people they have baby doll syndrome. So at 2 o'clock, you wake up and your eyes fly open and you are completely awake. And usually you don't fall back to sleep until maybe 5 or 5:30. And if you're lucky, you get an hour of solid sleep before the alarm goes off at 6:30. Many people experience this when they're working through burnout or when it's really starting to hit. So pay attention to that. If that's your pattern of sleep right now, it's time to really think about maybe reaching out and talking to Tracy. Another thing that starts to happen is you start what they call revision of values. You start to see things through a lens differently. And it can be very consuming, and you become insensitive to others. And everything that you valued in terms of your family and your friends becomes secondary to your goals. It almost becomes physically putting aside those things that you value in terms of what provide richness to your life. Family, friends, pets. People stop walking their dogs or engaging in their dogs or get off the couch. Those are things to look for. If you're having that, here's that animal again, really begin to check yourself because it's becoming a revision of your values. Number 6 is denial. Denial always figures in something of these stages when we're working, whether it's grief, whether it's patterns of accountability and abuse. But it ends up here in burnout because, of course, we would deny. We begin to be bitter and cynical, but it's not because we have a problem. It's because other people are, and nobody takes our advice, and you become impatient and angry, and your performance begins to suffer. And you can feel some physical discomfort because that kind of anger and that kind of bitterness, again, sits hard if this is the work that you came to do because you had a passion for helping people. So it's a real shift in kind of your emotional compass. And it's hard. It's like sitting with something that you can't swallow because it hurts. Number 7 is withdrawal. That tracks right, because I think if you think about this and it begins to be so overwhelming and you're beginning to feel angry, what do you do but you withdraw from the work that is making you feel like it's a burden? Or dealing with others is a burden. It all becomes so heavy. If someone suggests that maybe there was an error on something, you become angry. And then you realize that anger is impacting your work-life balance with your peers, so then you withdraw. So instead of having contact, you withdraw and you don't have any contact at all. You stay on the road, or you stay in a workplace setting that avoids one-to-one conversation. It is a piece that can really start to lead to self-medication because it, again, is not the norm of the patterns usually of what you brought into your workplace when you started wanting to be in the field. And so you self-medicate with alcohol many times or other substances. One that we watch for, I think, as managers, is a true behavior change when apathy sets in and nothing matters. You don't care about anything. You don't give for the work, for your colleagues, for professional development. You just don't care. And then you start to avoid additional responsibilities. And you just withdraw even more. And then it just becomes that cycle. Number 9 is depersonalization. And I think that's important to really challenge because you really lose your sense of identity. Instead of seeing yourself as a social worker, your workplace identity in the helping role, you kind of lose everything around it, and you only see yourself as kind of a thing where the work is being done through you. But there is no connection, there is no identity to the career that you have worked so hard to build. And this can have some intrusive thoughts attached to it as well, because everything feels empty, meaningless, and you begin to kind of neglect everything about you, your self-care, your physical well-being. You don't care. And then, of course, that makes sense that you would be feeling empty at this stage. It's just exhaustion, anxiety and panic sets in, and there's just nothing left in the tank. The burnout is complete. And then finally, where this becomes a slide into something more depressive is where you begin to feel despair. You have feelings of self-hatred, loathing, and it can be coupled with intrusive thoughts. The wonderful thing about knowing the stages that lead to total burnout is that you can look and be aware, and when you sense this in yourself, you can look for an intervention, or you can look to make changes or have dialogue. And each of these stages is a chance for you to reach out to make changes, to re-engage. Because I think one of the biggest things about burnout is first resting, but then making changes in your workplace so you can re-engage in the work that you love. I think as a manager, one of the saddest things for me is to miss someone dealing with burnout and I lose them and they go out the door. Because sometimes you don't get a long period of time to see someone dealing with burnout. It's almost like straws that break the camel's back, is that a person's been doing really well or moving forward in their career and everything's going well, but then 3 or 4 life events, plus maybe a workplace change, come together and it happens really quickly. And as with everything that has stages, not everybody goes through these stages as a progression. They can be up, they can be down, or you can start at 1 and end up at 10, just like that. It is, though, about doing that check-in if you're thinking burnout is impacting you and going, okay, what am I feeling and is this where I'm at? And if you're at the behavioral change, what steps are you going to do to make other changes so you're not self-medicating, so you're not trying to avoid additional responsibilities? It's being aware where you are in this continuum of stages. And please don't email me and say, well, I have done 1 and 3, but I didn't do 5, 6, or 7, but I got to stage 11, so what's with that? Again, like I'm saying, you can be at various stages and you can ebb and flow based on what's going on. You can be at stage 8 if behavior changes, and then you could be at despair for another week, and then you could be back at it's just starting at stage 1. All of this, what we're trying to share with you, what we're trying to bring forward, is for you to be able to self-identify in the safety of your own home or in your own office while you're watching this, of where you might be needing to seek help. And that was one of the interesting things when we tried to bring everybody together in a group setting, either via Zoom or being here in person, is the fear that was palatable, that people were afraid that other people would know that they were burnt out. So we don't even know who's watching this. Managers and people are just sending this out, and it's a choice whether you click to get here. But it's also your choice to identify and talk about solutions with either Tracy, with your manager, with your EAP. And again, I'm going to say something here I know that you have heard time and time again, but your EAP is confidential. If you have the luxury of that service, please use it. And know that they're under the same pieces of confidentiality that any clinician is, or any worker or counselor. There is an oath that has to be respected. If you've managed to make it through session 2, thank you. I hope you see we're trying to get better as we go. I still have a lot of hand movement. I know that I'm trying. I know I'm going to get some emails about this is really good, but try and sit on your hands. Some of you will be a little bit more blunter than that, and thanks for the vote of confidence. But I'm hoping you're hearing the content, and I'm hoping you're hearing it in bite-sized pieces that you can digest. We're really trying to keep the language plain we're really trying to keep the focus simple, because I think if any of you are here and starting to deal with burnout, if I threw a lot of jargon or tried to bamboozle with a lot of fancy phrases or pieces, I think I'll lose you. And I think what we want to make sure is that this is accessible for everyone to kind of self-reflect and gauge. So if I've done that today, I hope so. And I think we're going to talk about burnout causes in our next section and really lay out some of those pieces. And then guess what? We're going to talk about steps that you can take. And actually, Tracy Logan will be here to talk about self-care. And then we're going to have Sandy Watson, who is just retired as the executive director of Three Oaks Foundation, to talk about her own experience with her own burnout and what she did, because she was in the field for over 40 years. So there's some future things to look forward to. It just won't be me talking, but thank you for your time.